I knew Sam Cooke, not the way the world knew him, not through the records or the television appearances or the headlines about another colored entertainer breaking through. I knew him for an hour, maybe less, in a room that smelled of cigarette smoke and old carpet. Sometime in night, it was late. I remember that. Late enough that the city outside had gone quiet, or as quiet as cities ever get. He had just finished something, a performance, an interview. I don't recall, and someone I knew said Sam Cooke wanted to talk. Not to Walter Cronkite, the newsman, just to talk. I went. He was sitting when I arrived, suit pressed, tie still knotted, shoes shined to a mirror finish. He looked like a man who had somewhere important to be, except he didn't. He was just sitting. He stood when I entered, shook my hand, offered me a seat. His voice was softer than I expected, gentle almost. The kind of voice that made you lean in. We talked about nothing for a while. The weather, travel, the usual things strangers say to fill space. But I could tell he wanted to say something else. I've done enough interviews to know when a man is working up to a point. So I waited. He asked me if I thought America was listening, not to him specifically, to any of it. The marches, the speeches, the songs. He said it without bitterness, just curiosity, like he genuinely wanted to know. I told him I thought so. I said people were paying attention, that change was coming, that the news was covering it now in ways it hadn't before. I believe that. I still believe it, mostly. He nodded. He didn't disagree. But he didn't agree either. He said something I've never forgotten. He said, "They hear me singing, but they don't hear me." I asked him what he meant. He leaned back. He looked at the ceiling for a moment, like he was deciding whether to continue. Then he said the white audiences loved him because he didn't frighten them. He smiled when he said it. Not a bitter smile, just a tired one. He said he could fill a room with white people who would clap and cheer and buy his records, and they would never once think about what it cost him to stand on that stage. They didn't want to know. They wanted the voice, the charm, the reassurance that everything was fine, that he was fine. He said he had built something, a business, a career, a name. He was proud of it. He owned his own label, his own publishing. He had done what almost no colored man in the music business had done. But he also said it felt like walking a tightrope every single day. One misstep, one moment of anger, one refusal to smile, and it could all disappear. Not because he wasn't talented, because America only wanted him on its terms. I asked if that made him angry. He thought about it. He said no. He said anger was expensive. He couldn't afford it, not yet. He told me about a song he had been working on. He didn't say the name, but I found out later it was A Change Is Gonna Come. He said he almost didn't want to release it. He said it felt too raw, too honest. He was afraid it would cost him the audience he had worked so hard to build. But he also said he couldn't keep singing love songs and pretending that was all there was. He said sometimes you have to tell the truth even when no one wants to hear it. I asked him if he thought the song would change anything. He smiled again, that same tired smile. He said he didn't know. He said maybe it wasn't about changing things. Maybe it was just about saying it out loud, so someone somewhere would know they weren't alone. He talked about his childhood then, the church, gospel music, his father's voice leading the congregation. He said he grew up believing that music was supposed to mean something, that it was supposed to carry weight. But the music business didn't work that way. The music business wanted hits. It wanted danceable rhythms and romantic lyrics and nothing that would make anyone uncomfortable at dinner. He said he had made peace with that for a long time. He had sung the love songs. He had smiled for the cameras. He had played the game better than almost anyone, and it had worked. He was rich. He was famous. He could walk into rooms that would have been closed to him 10 years earlier, but something had shifted. He didn't say what. Maybe it was Birmingham. Maybe it was watching younger men and women getting beaten on the news. Maybe it was just time. He said he kept thinking about what he would tell his children someday, when they asked him what he did during these years, when they wanted to know if their father had stood for something or just stood aside. He said that question kept him awake at night. I asked him what his manager thought about the new song. He laughed. It was a short laugh, almost sad. He said his manager thought it was too risky, too political. He said there were people who wanted him to stick to what had worked, who reminded him that he had obligations, contracts, people depending on him. He said they weren't wrong, but he also said there comes a moment when you have to decide what kind of man you want to be. He told me about a dinner party he had attended a few months earlier. Wealthy people, influential people, the kind of people who prided themselves on their open-mindedness. They had asked him to sing. They always asked him to sing, and he had. Something light, something pleasant. And afterward, a woman had told him how wonderful it was that he didn't sing those protest songs. She said she admired him for staying above all that ugliness. He said he had smiled and thanked her, but he had driven home that night feeling sick. He said he realized that his success depended on people believing he was above the struggle, that he had somehow transcended what other colored people were going through, that he was different, better, safe. He said he didn't want to be safe anymore. We sat in silence after that. I didn't know what to say. I'm a newsman. I'm trained to ask questions, to press for answers, to find the story. But there was no story to find. He had already given it to me. I just didn't know what to do with it. He asked me about my work, whether I ever felt the weight of it, whether I ever wanted to say more than the news allowed. I told him the truth. I said yes. I said there were stories I covered where I wanted to do more than just report. I wanted to explain, to contextualize, to help people understand what they were seeing. But that wasn't my role. My role was to deliver the facts and let people decide for themselves. He nodded. He said he understood that. He said he had been doing something similar his whole career, delivering what people wanted and hoping they would hear what he meant underneath. But he said he was tired of the underneath. He wanted to say things plainly. I asked him if he was afraid. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said yes. He said he was afraid of losing everything he had built. He was afraid of being labeled as difficult, as ungrateful, as too political. He was afraid of what it would mean for his family, his business, his legacy. But he said he was more afraid of reaching the end of his life and realizing he had never said what he really believed. He stood up eventually, walked to the window. The street below was empty. He said something about how quiet the world gets at night, how you can almost convince yourself that the daytime noise isn't real. But then morning comes and everything starts again. He turned back to me. He said he appreciated me listening. He said it helped to talk to someone who didn't need him to be anything in particular. I don't think that was true. I think everyone needed Sam Cooke to be something. I just didn't realize what I needed from him until much later. He shook my hand again, thanked me for coming. I left him standing there by the window, looking out at nothing. That was the last time I saw him. When I heard he had died, I thought about that conversation. I thought about the way he sat so still, the way he chose his words so carefully, the way he seemed to carry the weight of something I couldn't see. I thought about what he said. They hear me singing, but they don't hear me. I understood then what he meant. He had given everything he had to be heard, and America had taken the song and left the man. The news reports about his death were confusing, conflicting, ugly. I read them and I thought about the man I had met, careful, thoughtful, dignified, and I wondered how someone like that ends up dead in a motel at 33 years old. I still wonder. I don't know if things have changed since then. I don't know if we listen any better now than we did in that room. I hope so. I'd like to think so. But I think about Sam Cooke sitting in that chair, tired and impeccable and alone, and I wonder if we ever really hear anyone until it's too late. He was 33 when he died, 33 years old. He had written songs that would outlive all of us. He had built something that should have been impossible, and still he wasn't free. That's what stays with me. Not just that he died young, that he died before he got to be free. I knew Sam Cooke for 1 hour, in one room, in a city I can't quite remember. And what I remember most is not the things he said, but the way he said them, carefully, quietly, like a man who knew the world was listening, but wasn't sure it would understand. That is what I remember, and that is the way it was.